But first, Stan Grant attracting a lot of media attention this week, and the discussion has sort of flipped from one about criticism regarding the ABC's coverage of the King's recent coronation to now one of support and sympathy for racialist abuse, he calls it, that he says he's copped as a broadcaster. Now, this is a challenging issue, not least for the ABC. It's about as woke as it gets, and if left-wing types aren't safe at the ABC, well, where are they safe? Now, if that's true, well, let's see where it ends up. But social media is a sewer. That's why I really get on it. But providing a slightly different take on all of this today was Neil Mitchell on radio in Melbourne this morning. Have a listen.
In a truly racist country, Stan wouldn't have had the glittering career he's had despite his talent. A truly racist country would not have welcomed him as viewers have welcomed him over the decades.
Joining me now, Nick Cater from the Menzies Research Centre and Senior Fellow at the Institute of Public Affairs, John Roskam. Let's start with you if we can, Nick. Give me your take on Stan Grant and how this has all played out from the coronation fiasco until those scenes we saw last night as he farewelled the Q&A audience.
Yeah, and look, I mean, it's hard not to see Stan's performance last night and not feel enormous sympathy for him, especially, you know, those of us who've known Stan, who still know Stan and know what a reasonable and decent guy he is. But I think what I'd say to him right now is, Stan, this is not about you. This discussion was never about you, and it certainly wasn't about your Aboriginality or your race. This is about the national broadcaster and how it decides to cover an event of enormous national significance, the coronation of the monarch. And there may be a lot of people at the ABC that wish there wasn't a king or a queen and wish we had a president or something instead. But put that to one side. This was a very, very important national event. It deserved correct, respectful and solemn coverage, and the ABC viewers didn't receive that. That's what this discussion is about. It's not about Stan. It's not about his ethnicity, his race or anything like that. And if he's had a horrible time on Twitter, then that is horrible. We know what that's like, don't we? But let's please get this back on track to a debate about how the national broadcaster should behave.
I guess for me too, John, it's a debate or a line here on free speech and where that goes from free speech to abuse. Now, I'll use myself as an example here with women. I think it's absolutely fair game that I cop criticism. I'm in the media. But when that line hits the violent and sexual stuff that no one should cop, well, fair enough, you want to call that out. Now, I guess it's very much the similar thing here with Stan Grant and race. But how do you draw that line? Where is that line drawn? And how much of this criticism was, you know, as Nick says, better levelled at the ABC for a terrible programming decision and less about the colour of Stan Grant's skin?
Well, that's a really important question, Peter. Threats of violence are against the law. They're unlawful. But not every criticism of Stan Grant is based on race. I can't imagine the impact of the nasty things that have been said about him, but Conservatives get that on Twitter all the time. Peter, you, me, Nick, we've all been subject to abuse, and certainly not of the level of what Stan has suffered. But we need to understand, as Nick said, it's not all about Stan, and the ABC has brought this on themselves. They deliberately cast a provocative panel, as Nick said, on a very important day. They knew exactly what they were doing. They knew the views of all the panelists, and then there has been legitimate criticism. And then, as Stan Grant says, ABC management is nowhere to be seen.